Most cars eventually reach the point where they're so battered and run down that they no longer have any value. They can't even be used for part exchange, and so they either get scrapped or abandoned. That isn't true of all cars, though. Some are so rare and unique that they're still worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, even in a derelict state. That doesn't stop them from occasionally becoming abandoned, though, even if they're ultra-rare prototypes and concept cars. Any car that has a Maserati badge usually retains at least some of its value no matter what state it ends up in. As an example, here's a 1975 Maserati Bora that was found rusting away in the desert near Los Angeles, California in 2016. It's obviously in need of a lot of repair work, but the shell of the car is still there. And things aren't so bad that it has to be written off. There isn't much more than the chassis left, but fortunately, the climate of the desert has prevented rust from setting in. It's going to need a new drivetrain and a lot of new parts, but in the right hands, it could easily become $1 million car. Nobody knows how or why the beautiful car came to be in this condition, but it looks like the majority of the fixtures and fittings were removed deliberately. Perhaps someone took the parts out to use on another vehicle. The shell of the car was sold at auction for $35,000, which is perhaps a little steep for what was left of it, but it's still only a drop in the ocean compared to what it could potentially be worth if refurbished. You'd never believe this forgotten British racing car was worth big money from sight alone. You can tell from the shape that it used to be a sleek, aerodynamic vehicle, but time hasn't been kind to it. The powertrain is missing, and the bodywork is showing the dents and divots of countless impacts. Despite that, it was sold for $92,000 shortly after it was found in October 2016. That's because underneath all the rust and decay is an iconic racer with a fine pedigree. That's because it's an incredibly rare Costin Nathan Works prototype, one that's been sitting inside a garage for at least 45 years. The car was designed by a pair of designers who have legendary status among Lotus enthusiasts, Frank Costin and Roger Nathan. It was completed in 1966 with a bizarre plywood finish that made it super light, meaning that a 998cc Hellman Imp engine was all it needed to get up to racing speed. Nathan drove it himself and took it to 5 class wins in the same year it was first exhibited. When we say the name Bizzarini, most of the car enthusiasts among you will immediately think of the Lamborghini V12. You'd be right to do so. It was a classic design that endured for several decades. Far fewer of you will ever have heard of the Bizzarini 1966 5300 Strada. That might be because only 133 units of the vehicle were ever made, and most of them have been lost to time. Surviving examples of the car almost never turn up on the market, and when they do, it's even rarer for them to be in condition as good as this model, which was found in 2017 after being parked in a garage since the mid-1980s. It still has its original 327 V8 Corvette engine under the hood and comes with the same 4-speed manual transmission it was fitted with on the day it rolled off the production line. It's a little dusty, but it's hardly been driven at all, and there are less than 10,000 miles on the clock. When it attracted a price of $1.6 million at auction, the only surprise was that it didn't go even higher. When an Oklahoma junkyard closed down for the last time in 1953 because of a zoning dispute with local authorities, everything inside the junkyard was trapped behind a barbed wire fence and sealed away for decades. Not until 2014 were the doors opened again, and what was hiding behind them shocked everyone. The family that still owned the lot had been hiding not only a supercharged Cord from 1936, but also another supercharged Cord model from 1937 to go along with it. Both of the front-wheel drive cars are considered to be classics and could be worth upwards of $200,000 each, but will need a little refurbishment to get them up to that value. Also squirreled away under the junkyard covers were a Lincoln 7-seater sedan from 1939, a 1924 Roland touring sedan that's thought to be one of only 4 left in the world. Taken along with the other, less rare cars in the yard, The whole collection was thought to be worth well in excess of $1 million. We just hope that the cords went to buyers who had the skills to bring them back to life. Not all the rare car finds we have to show you were discovered because they came to auction houses. Some of them are still hidden from sight, and we only know about them because of the antics of urban explorers. That's the case with this Lancia Aprilia Speciale, which is inside an abandoned textile factory in Italy. The textile factory hasn't been open in nearly 30 years, but the car itself is far older. It's a second series Aprilia and is a seldom seen example of the coach-built variant of the car. It may even be possible that this is the same car that won the Best in Class prize at the Via d'Este concourse in 1949. What gives the design away as a Pininfarina design is the presence of the lower side grills with their vertical slats, a feature the famous designer would use again on his Alfa Romeo 6C 2500S. Even the paintwork of the slightly rusty car appears to be factory issue, although it's peeling away on the sides. As the textile factory is still closed, there's no telling what might happen to the cars inside, although it's hoped that someone gets the car out before the building is demolished. Ferrari knows a thing or two about making highly desirable, very valuable cars. The trick is to make a car that's beautiful and then to make just a few models so it almost immediately becomes rare. Only 400 Ferrari Enzo models were ever made, so each one ought to be the pride of somebody's collection. Instead, thanks to careless, rich owners, we're left with ridiculous incidents like this dusty Ferrari Enzo being abandoned in a car park in China. The car hasn't been clamped or towed, so the parking space has presumably been paid up to date. But the thick layer of dust on the forgotten prancing horse suggests that nobody's been back to the car for a very long time. Interestingly, the license plates are missing, so the car can't be driven legally even if the V12 engine still starts after all this time. If the owner's out there somewhere watching this, please come back and get your incredible car soon. It deserves to be cared for a lot better than this. Even in this battered, rusty, dusty condition, we would recognize the shape of this classic British sports car anywhere. It's a Jaguar Xk120, and seeing it in such poor condition is a crying shame. Things get even worse when you look under the hood. At some point in this car's history, someone thought it would be a neat idea to take out the inline-six engine and replace it with a Ford V8. That's an act of vandalism. The Ford V8 looks like it's been in there for a while. Its condition isn't much better than the rest of the car. Why this car came to be in such a shabby state is something of a mystery, but it's possible that it belongs to a collector who either can't or won't maintain their cars anymore. We say that because found right next to the stricken Jaguar was an Austin Healey 3000. Both the cars were found in the USA, so it looks like someone once had a fondness for importing expensive British vehicles, then leaving them to rot. What a strange hobby. If we told you you could get a hold of a Jaguar E-Type at a knockdown price, you'd probably jump for joy. But you might calm down again when you saw the state of it. It's hard to accept that this battered wreck is a luxury car at all. The windows are shattered, the paintwork is flaked away, and the bodywork is bent. It almost looks like it's been involved in an accident. The car was bought brand new in April 1962, but the last record of sale comes from Birmingham, England in 1997. It was bought as a restoration project, but the new owner never got around to performing the planned restoration. That meant it spent more than 20 years sitting around in a barn as the decay problem became even worse. We're told that it still has all of its original parts, although how many of those parts are still salvageable at this point is anybody's guess. Even in this state, the poor old couple sold for almost $50,000 at auction. Having spent all that money, we hope its new owner is willing to invest a little more in getting it into shape. This next discovery is another find we have to credit urban explorers with. It's so unique that the auction house that eventually took possession of it said it was the equivalent of finding a brand new Rembrandt painting. It's a 1929 racing Bentley, and it's been parked in the garage of an abandoned country house in Surrey, England since the property's last owner passed away in 1985. According to the documentation that came with the car, it was originally purchased by the owner's grandfather when it was almost brand new in the early 1930s. Approximately 1,800 of the cars were built, but the overwhelming majority have long since disappeared or irreparably broken down. Simply put, finding one in condition this good almost never happens. When it does, it's very big news in the classic car collecting world. All of the original parts and furnishings are still there, and it's been looked after so well that it needs little more than a deep clean and a touch of basic maintenance to get it up and running again. Because of that, it was expected to have no problem meeting and exceeding its $400,000 guide price when it went to auction. The abandonment of this ultra-valuable Koenigsegg Trevita in Zurich, Switzerland offends us in more ways than one. Not only is abandoning a car worth $2 million utterly reprehensible, but the owner has parked it across 2 spots in a garage before locking the doors and walking away. How much more careless could they possibly be? Only 3 units of this particular variant of the car were ever made, and given its location, it's likely that the car belongs to a resident of the hyper-wealthy and exclusive Swiss state of Schwyz. Unfortunately, having that much money means that you can afford to be careless like this. To them, leaving a priceless car like this behind is no more significant than you or I abandoning a broken-down old runabout that we'd spend a couple of $100s on. The beautiful car has been well documented online, with almost everyone who sees it stopping to take pictures of it, but so far there's still no sign of the owner coming back for it. Here's a supercar that caused British police to scratch their heads in puzzlement in May 2017. It's a blue Ferrari 488 GTB. It has a value of around $400,000, and it was found dumped in the middle of a field near Huddersfield in Yorkshire. From looking at the car, it was immediately apparent it had crashed. There was a hole in the fence on the road, and the car had sustained damage to the front right-hand side. But the damage was nowhere near bad enough to write the car off. Why would the owner of the car run away and leave it behind instead of phoning for assistance? It hadn't been reported as stolen, so criminal activity wasn't suspected. Without a crime to investigate, there was a limit to what the police could do with the car. So they took it in and placed it in temporary storage. It's thought that it's still there today. If nobody comes forward to claim their outrageously expensive vehicle, it will eventually go to auction, and someone is likely to get a Ferrari at a bargain price. Somewhere in a parallel world, Marussia is still trading, and they've captured a huge share of the luxury supercar market. Here in reality, though, it wasn't meant to be. Marussia launched to a lot of fanfare in 2007, but 7 short years later, the dream was dead. Financial issues had caused the company to close. The closure came so suddenly that several luxury cars in various stages of part or near completion were left behind at their factory in Russia. Here they are, still waiting to be painted, locked away behind steel gates, and decaying a little more with each passing day. There are examples of the planned couple and F2 models here, destined never to be driven. All of the cars would have been sold for more than $100,000, and pre-orders have been agreed on some of them, but it wasn't enough to keep the bills paid. While we recognize the shapes of some of these vehicles, others appear to be unlike anything we've ever seen on any official Marussia documents. They could have been secret models or exciting new prototypes. It's surprising that nobody ever came along to buy them up and finish the job. There must be a market out there somewhere for them. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.